more on Go. What's special about Go? And you kind of cover the basics. That's what, is the stuff that you kind of have to do to get off the ground in most programming languages. Then you got to ask the question, why am I using this language? What's special about it? Now we're going to look at that, but before we do, I thought I'd bring up some things that are in the Bitcoin blockchain news. And I actually get to do this in a different way. I just read an article about land registry in Mexico, and they've actually gone all the way online with a blockchain for all the registered land, all the newly sold land in the country. So if you sell something down there, it's going on a blockchain. And they're not the first. Estonia has converted their entire country to this. We'll come back to that when we talk about the value of a blockchain in doing something like that. Now, recently there's been some kind of bad news and a couple things. The Fed secretary is not a fan of blockchain, specifically Bitcoin. And she suggested that we just pause adoption of it because, people are just using it for illegal stuff. Which I don't think is actually true, but certainly there is some illegal activity. And I don't think the amount of money has really changed. I mean, with regular United States dollars, we have currencies or countries like North Korea that regularly print large volumes of $100 bills, US, and then proceed to spend them. So, good quality forgeries do exist. And the kind of sad news, and this is one that I've been expecting for a long time, is they found a case of double spend in Bitcoin. And when we talk more about mining and proof of work, we're going to talk a little bit about double spend and why this happened. But those are kind of the things that are grabbing me in the news these days. There are in the land of blockchain. Okay, we've got the cryptocurrencies. But in the land of blockchain, there are really three things that are the big factors that determine whether or not you can build something and adopt it. And the first of those is the cost of data. And you go, what's the big deal with the cost? If I go out to set up a Postgres database and I want to store a single 32-bit number, it's not a very big number. But my cost is about this is, DigitalOcean. I set it up. That's the cost, you setting up a database that's fairly decent size. It's something like that to store it. If I do that in Ethereum right now, with it running, $900 per ETH, my cost for storing that same 32-bit value, actually, Ethereum wants to upgrade it to a 256-bit. So it's a little bit bigger, but they want to upgrade it. Is going to run about, $1.2. Okay, remember this was cents. So it's going to run about $1.20. Now, if I do the same sort of thing, I want to do a transaction in Bitcoin, and I want to store this, we're looking somewhere along the line of $11 to $15. So, why is this? I mean, here we've got one computer we're paying maybe $20 a month for. Here we have something on the order of 11,000 computers. I'll just put down 10,000. And here we have about 10,000. Now, these prices are determined to some extent based on the currency itself. But at those kind of prices, you've got to ask, what can I do that will justify using something that expensive? So the cost of data is one of those. Now, the second one is speed. And I'm actually going to have two different things on speed here. The first is throughput. And the second one is turnaround, latency. Okay. Throughput. Some years ago, in the land of Ethereum, they started up this thing called the CryptoKitties. I own a couple of them, yes. Oh, isn't that embarrassing? I own CryptoKitties. But I had to buy a CryptoKitty to see how it worked. So, you know, my CryptoKitties are not worth anything. Okay, I mean, some of them sell for like $100,000. They're cute, they're worth a lot. But no, mine are completely worthless CryptoKitties. The reason they're completely worthless is because it costs about $25 to sell one right now, to pay all of the fees for the Ethereum to get it sold, and they're worth about $15, so they're somewhere in the negative range. I don't think they'll ever be worth anything, but I learned some stuff, and it didn't cost me much to buy them at the time. But when CryptoKitties released, this was on Ethereum 1.x, they're on 2.x now, which is a lot faster. CryptoKitties saturated the entire Ethereum network at 15 transactions a second. That was as much as it could carry. Now, you look at something like you'd like to track cows on a blockchain. If Wyoming tracked half of its cows, then the number of transactions that would actually have to happen, if you spread that out 24 hours a day, would be more than 15 transactions per second in certain months of the year. So speed throughput says you can't do it on Ethereum. I mean, the network won't support it. Ethereum 2.0 is too new for me to be able to say, well, it does or it doesn't work. It's not the only thing out there. We could look at something like IOHK and Cardano. And the cost of restoring this 32-bit value there is about 0.02 cents. You'll notice that's a lot more than just putting it in a regular database, but suddenly at these kind of costs, we can actually do productive things. And what kind of throughput do we see out of the Cardano chain? Well, we see something on the order of 150 TPS. And there is good reason to suspect that that is not what it's going to max at. There is this other thing that they're working on that will be out late this year called Hydra, that will probably increase this by 100-fold. Like 150,000 or 15,000 transactions per second. So, speed. Now the next one is latency. People expect that when you bring up an app on a computer, you know, you bring it up and it pops up, and there's good research from Google saying that, by golly, if it's 500 milliseconds, that's going to be much better than 1.5 milliseconds. Or 1.5 seconds. As in, people will just leave the app, they won't do things, they won't buy stuff if it doesn't happen. Now, when we bring up a Web3 application and it actually has to interact with the blockchain, Ethereum is pretty fast. It is about every 22 seconds. A new block. Bitcoin is 10 per hour, no, 6 per hour. And you don't have it confirmed for at least 2 blocks. So we're talking 15 minutes. More than likely. So with speeds like that, latency in actually getting an answer as to what you're doing is a critical thing. Now, these things have associated with them data that you can read that's immediate, that doesn't take this kind of latency. But when you actually go to change something, when you want to build a transaction and change something, you've got this kind of a problem. So these are the 3 critical things that determine whether or not stuff works. Now, there are 2 different kinds of, as far as I can tell, kinds of smart contract operations. Okay? The first one is some sort of a thing like Ethereum spending ETH on something, buying something, where you're transferring value. And there are applications like that. Certainly, you know, you want to buy a ticket, or you want to purchase something, or you want to monetize something, or you want to buy, you know, tokens in a particular company. Those fall into that first kind of category. And those work reasonably well, and there are exchanges that will allow you to do it faster than directly on top of the chain itself, and then they'll act as a clearinghouse to send it to the chain and get it done. And that's one kind. The second kind, which actually turns out to have lots and lots of applications, is a metadata operation. Metadata is where you're going to put something on the chain, but what you're going to put on the chain is a hash. The hash is representative. It is a seal, a signature, a digital component that signs something else that's out there on the chain, or something else that's not on the chain that you shared in a different way. Like if we have cows, we may want to put a signature that, by golly, this cow got branded on this day. But the actual data of where is the cow, the GPS location, the address of the ranch, all of those things are part of that, but all of those things are not on the chain. They're stored someplace else where you can get to them, but they're not the piece that's actually written on the blockchain. And that piece of metadata, the seal that guarantees the data, that says this is the data we had at this point, makes for how things like supply chain stuff, applications. There's a real nice application that came live a few months ago down in Colorado that's based on using an Ethereum smart contract from a former student in this class. They're working down there. And it tracks all of the parolees in the state. So if you're at this location in the state and you move over to this location, but you need to check in over at this location for your being on parole and you haven't done anything wrong, it allows you to do that. It allows you to do that without mistakes, without communication between the two, because it's all stored out here. But what it's putting on the chain and what it's synchronizing between those two different locations is just a piece of metadata. It's a hash. The actual data gets synchronized independently from this. And that ability to synchronize outside data and keep it in order and make certain it's synchronized is incredibly valuable too. So there's more to a blockchain than just the top level stuff. And these are the factors that seem to determine whether or not things work or they don't. So I do want to get back to Go, because we talked about Go. We kind of gave you the bottom level stuff. But I want to touch on this first, and then we're going to take a look at why we're using Go and what's good about it.